Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app on Apple, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, and on Android, Spotify, or the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Also, check out Off the Floor. That's our Discord server. Our guy Adel just had a stage show on there today. You can find the stage shows as well as 10 different channels. That includes Draft Channel, Transaction Channel. I'm just going to turn it into a KD channel at this point. I'm actually going to turn it into a Ritalin channel because everybody's just asking me all day long, are they getting KD? Anyway, check out Off the Floor. Link right here in the description. Bypass the Apple upcharge. You pay $2.99 a month. You can cancel at any time. It's a better place than Twitter these days, that's for sure. Also, check out Prize Picks. Use the code 5, F-I-V-E. Put down your $5. You get $50 to play right away. You can also join our contest tied to how our hosts of Five on the Floor are doing. I've needled Alex enough. Anyway, use the code 5, F-I-V-E. Put down your 5. Get 50 to play. Legal in the state of Florida. You can play the NBA Finals, Stanley Cup Finals, MLB, and more. And now, today's episode.
Mercy, luxurious, Heat Nation, yeah, Mercy and Lago, down to Biscayne, yay, five on the floor, ride for my dogs, where here's the thing, you can check the score, hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frauds, down to Biscayne. Kept the floor playing, got it all band. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat, we trust, it's about have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the Five Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick at Five Reasons Sports. I got Digital Adel. You can follow him at Digital Adel. I got Eternal Bast. You can follow him at Eternal Bast. You can find both of them on playback. Follow us throughout the NBA Finals and also on Off the Floor. So we're breaking down various aspects of a possible Kevin Durant trade. Just the fact that we're doing these episodes does not mean the Heat are acquiring him. So I just want to be clear on that. But, we have time to fill. And it's interesting right now. Actually, it's interesting because this is another pursuit, and the Heat are not willing to go all in on KD. And one of the reasons is something we're going to talk about today. So Alex Toledo and I spoke about style of play, offensive style of play on a podcast that should actually, as we're speaking now, post before this one does. And one of the things we got into was the idea that Kevin Durant at this stage of his career is a jump shooter. He is an elite jump shooter. He is a plus jump shooter from every single spot on the floor. He's a jump shooter as good as anybody his size has ever been over the course of NBA history. But he's a jump shooter. He doesn't get to the line all that much anymore. He actually gets to the line less, or gets to the rim less than Tyler Hero does at this stage per possession. And again, those numbers have been dropping over time. So a player who you may remember is getting to the free throw line a lot, 9 to 11 times a game, consistently during his OKC and for some of his Golden State days. That's not really happening anymore. So building an offense around someone like that, who may not command the kind of doubles or the attention, even though he's an elite scorer, is a bit of a challenge. And that's one of the reasons Phoenix was 13th in the league in offense last year in offensive rating, 10th the year before. Other reasons, two different coaches, not a lot of talent there other than Devin Booker, but still, they were not able to build a top 5 offense, as you might think, and just put Kevin Durant in your offense, and all of a sudden it's top 5. But there's another issue here, and this issue harkens back to what started all of this in the first place, which was Pat Riley having a press conference after the season prior to this one and saying that Jimmy Butler needed to be more available. And so we're going to take a look at how available Kevin Durant has been. And I have certain views on this that I know a couple of the other panelists here may not agree with. Again, it's got Eternal Bass and we got Digital Adel here. But I'll let Eternal lead on this because you kind of brought this to the forefront on Off the Floor. How available has Kevin Durant been in comparison to other stars over the past few years?
So we'll take a look at it. Just to start off, Kevin Durant over the last, since 2018, 2019, has averaged 58.7 games played per season for a total of 352 games. To that same extent, 2019-2020 for Tyler Hero, it's been 60.2 games for a total games of 361. For Jimmy, it is 58.7 for a total game of 411. Now, if I expand that out, since you threw a question I wasn't prepared for, because I have to go look this up for Steph and LeBron, uh, just starting out there with particular two players who have either played for Miami or is still playing for Miami, that's already a major concern considering we're talking about availability and you're also talking about competing in a supposedly wide open East that just got better yesterday.
So just to be clear on this, the numbers, the average that you're giving for Durant, that includes the season missed due to the Achilles tear, correct? That's
Yes.
1920. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So for those who aren't trailing this quite as much, his last season as in Golden State was 18-19. And of course, he got hurt in the finals, if you recall. I just want to go through his Golden State numbers here. In OKC, his last season in OKC, 15-16, he was 27 years old, played 72. He played 62 in 16-17. He played 68 in 17-18. He played 78 in 18-19. They got to the finals, lost to Toronto when both he and Clay got hurt in the finals. Missed the 19-20 season. In Brooklyn, the next year, played 35, recovering from the injury. Then 55, 57. Some of this is skewed a little bit because of COVID shortening. So 1920, well, that was the main COVID season anyway. But 2021 was a shortened season. Just take that into account. 21-22, 55 games. 22-23, you combine the two places. He played 47. That was between Brooklyn and Phoenix. Played 70 and then played 62 in Phoenix last season. Now, I'll say this, Adel. The numbers, when you start putting in context with Tyler, criticized for lack of availability, and Jimmy, who's been criticized for lack of ability, it doesn't look great. But just to put it in some context, most stars these days are playing in that 60 to 70 game range. It's one game range, right? That's one of the reasons that the NBA put in the 65 game rule, try to get them to play more so that they'd be eligible for awards. But he has had an Achilles. He's had knee problems. We know that. How concerned would you be about his availability in general?
I'm not as concerned about his availability in general in the first couple of seasons. I'm more concerned about that third year whenever he's like, if they extend him and he's got a ton of money on the books. When you have an Achilles issue like that in a sport where you're constantly pushing off, I'm worried about that, man. It does really concern me. He's bounced back really well. I mean, better than most athletes would have. But it is a concern relative to his age and the contract extension that they would have to give him. My sticking point with this whole Kevin Durant thing is more based around what they would have to give up to acquire him, more than the extension and the availability due to injury or potential of.
But doesn't that, to be fair to Eternal's point here, it doesn't that tie into it? Because if you're giving up, I mean, let's say, and I don't believe they're going to give up Khalil Ware. Okay, I'll be surprised if they do, based on information so far. But if you never know what can happen at the finish line if you have a bunch of teams competing for a player,
right?
But one of the issues here is you've got a 20-year-old, right, 21-year-old, who you're counting on to grow into his body and to play a lot going forward and to eat up those innings, so to speak. You've got a young team around it. If you're getting Durant, you're giving up more players probably than you're bringing in. You got to fill out the roster with some of the other guys. They've done this before, but again, I understand why it would be a concern for some fans. And then eternally, you're expecting KD to carry to a certain extent. I mean, you're gonna have Bam, Tyler, or else if he's not playing, then you're stuck watching Tyler and Bam try to carry this thing, and we just saw how that went. And you may have less around them because you may not have Jovic, who hasn't been available that much either. Okay, we should acknowledge.
Just to be fair,
Jovic and/or Ware is gone. Perhaps Jaquez, who did eat some innings this year, not all that well, but they're hoping for a bounce back. So I guess that would be the concern is you're not bringing in KD to coast. You're bringing in KD, and you're also then we know they're going to be asked to give him an extension, and my understanding is they would.
Mm-hmm.
So then you're asking him to, be a big part of this thing this year, and then you're committing roughly 110 to 120 million dollars to him probably for the next 2 years at age 38 and 39. So that's the thing here is that, and this gets into what we were talking about with Jimmy, where their thing was they wanted him to play more, right, to earn the money, but then playing more ultimately, probably weren't going to get the most out of him because he wasn't really in physical condition that he used to be able to do that. Am I hitting on all this, Eternal?
Yes, I mean, so we'll start where you ended, and one of the biggest issues was besides, and I listed this and I noted this on Twitter when I made the tweet concerning this pod, is that their concern with Jimmy was they didn't think they were getting the maximum amount of effort from Jimmy in the games he did play in. Then there was also concern about the amount of games Jimmy was missing and how hard everybody talked about, what Pat said, you don't want to be trying to fight out of the play-in, right? Fighting against the top of the conference to get further into the playoffs. It's much easier if you are in that, 3 to 6 range where you're not battling against whoever is the Cleveland or the Boston or whoever, at the top of the conference. And so now you're in a different position where you're talking about the availability of KD, who just played 62 games for Phoenix Suns as of this past season. The season before, he played 70-plus games. The season before that wasn't nowhere near close to that. And you're talking about him going from a role for, I think we all can agree on, he wasn't the number one option in Phoenix.
I mean, that's tough to say. I mean, should we look at usage? Because I'm curious, actually. Because I don't know that off the top of my head. I didn't watch them enough. So let's look at Phoenix from this past season. And again, it was not a great season, but they were plus 500 when KD played, by the way. For those who are saying, well, he led them to a below 500 record. He didn't. It's just that sort of your point, Eternal. He didn't play 20 games. Now, some of those games he was shut down in. But I'm looking at because he didn't play the final 7 games of the season. So he might have played more than that, but there was no point. But let me take a look at usage for them this year. And I believe Booker's was higher, but I don't think it was significantly higher. It may take me a second to actually find this off the cuff. But I believe that Booker's was a little bit higher than his, and I can't find it right at the moment. So, again, I'll get to it after the break. But I guess the overall point to this, Adel, is that, in Miami, Tyler would – if say it's the 3 of them, okay, we'll be begging for Bam to have more usage, and he won't. So it'll end up being Tyler and Durant splitting that usage. Tyler's usage actually was supposed to go down last year. He was supposed to play more off the ball, but then Jimmy's lack of availability, and they had nobody else to do it, so Tyler did it. Do you think that Kevin's usage would be higher or lower in Miami than it was in Phoenix last year?
Well, we're throwing out a lot of generalities, and there's a lot of other factors at play. Like, if KD comes east, the competition is a lot less compared to the competition out west. The way I view KD coming to Miami, and the word carry, is carry them in fourth quarters and end of shot clock situations. I'm not expecting KD, who had a 28.7% usage rate in Phoenix last season, to do anything considerably more than that. Carrying in the sense for this Miami Heat team would be low shot clock and end of quarters closing out games. Like, that's the way I picture KD carrying. And I don't think it's something that would be super dramatic in terms of load management that you would have to do. The problem with comparing him and Jimmy Butler, Jimmy plays such a physical brand of basketball. As he aged, he just couldn't physically do it. Kevin Durant's so skilled, he's able to still get his shot off with his height, his length. I don't see a problem with the fit in terms of him having to carry, quote unquote, because it's only in the fourth quarter in low shot clock situations, really.
And to that point, I mean, you make a good point about style, but it's also one of those guys wanted to take nights off.
Right.
I don't think we'll go into games and wonder, is KD going to play tonight?
Right.
And we had to wonder about that first. Would Jimmy actually take the floor? And then when he took the floor, was he going to coast for 3 quarters and take 6 shots? That's not going to happen with KD. I do want to give you, before we get to break, on the other side of this, we'll explore a few more angles related to it. I did, and thank you, Adel, for giving me the usage rate, because I just found it also. 28.7 usage rate last year for this is according to Basketball Reference. Again, this is imperfect, but this is what they have. 28.7 for KD last year, 29.3 for Booker. So essentially, they co-carried. They were 1A, 1B. Now, you want me to do the Heat here? Because I feel like we should, in terms of usage rate. What did Tyler end up with? Did he end up hitting 30? I'll have to actually find that. You know what? I'll look for that after the break. But if somebody else can search for it also, that would probably help. But also, too,
before we go to break, one of the reasons why I felt like it was super important to have Adel on here for this, and I know that we was going to have on some points some differing views, but we're talking about a 37-year-old with soft tissue injuries, right? And when we're talking about availability, and just when you talk about odds of games potentially missed, and which is why I shared the LeBron and Steph part of it in our chat, which I'll touch on more, is as you get older, your body recovers slower, right? Much slower. And we're talking about high-level athletes. And yes, he's much more of a jump shooter now, right? Which ties into the other part of you're looking to extend this 37-year-old who may not play the amount of games that you were looking for someone else to play, regardless if he cares or don't care. That doesn't matter. As you're trying to compete, what's the maximum amount of games can we get out of you, right? And you're talking about these injuries. Like his last injury was an ankle injury. You look at his injury history, it's a bunch of ankle-related stuff, bunch of knee-related stuff, bunch of calf-related stuff. Those things can be tied directly to soft tissue injuries. So when you lay everything out, it's not the most promising thing. When you're looking
when you're talking about I get it, and I think probably if you got 70 games out of him, you'd be ecstatic. I think if you got 70 games and got him to the playoffs, that's about what you could hope for, and there probably will be games they hold him out of just to be safe, because that's what you do. We'll get to the rest of this quickly on the other side, but I do want to mention usage rates. So we mentioned Durant's was 28.7. Tyler led the Heat last year at 28.0. So slightly below both him and Booker. Wiggins, when he came to Miami, was 26.7, and Bam was 23.5. And I'll just pose this question and go to the other side of the break. Would you rather have Kevin Durant taking that usage or Andrew Wiggins? Because essentially, Wiggins had pretty close to the same usage in Miami that Durant had in Phoenix. That's another way to look at this. All right, one way to look at sending money is that you want to do it first expeditiously and also safely. And that's why the hosts of 5 on the Floor and so many others use Cash App. Sending money to the Cash App actually feels safe. They look after you if something seems sketchy. They see you might be sending money to a potential scammer, maybe like a Suns fan. They'll warn you and make you think twice before you hit send. It's like having a personal bodyguard for your cash. You can even spice up your payments with custom text, stamps, and backgrounds. Why should paying your friend be so boring? If for whatever insane reason you don't already have Cash App, just download it from your phone's app store, sign up, enter our code on the floor in your profile. That's on the floor. Send $5 to a friend. You get $10 just for getting started. Again, for a limited time only, new Cash App users can use our exclusive code on the floor to earn additional cash. Send $5 to a friend within 14 days. You get $10 drop right into your account. Terms apply. That's money, and that's Cash App. Okay, so back to Adel on this. If this is an organization that has preached, we need guys to be available. Tyler took it upon himself last year, and the one thing he lived up to, nobody can argue with, is he played. He played a lot. He played through stuff. Actually, there were a couple of other games he probably could have played to get his number up higher. I think he sat out the last game, but he got there. Bam has been consistently available throughout the course of his career. He had one injury of significance, really. Other than that, you can count on Bam to be out there. I guess as you look at the draft, because I know that's kind of your area here, and we're talking about the Heat building younger. When you have young players, when you bring in younger players, particularly real young players who have to grow into their bodies and stuff, isn't there an availability question about some of them also? Is there adjusting to the NBA game? Because there's one thing about availability, but like one of the questions with Kel'el Ware was his conditioning. Like we talked about that at Summer League where he started to wear down. I thought he started to wear down a little bit as this season ended. They got to get his conditioning up. I think they recognize it in addition to his strength. But isn't that a concern too? You got guys who played 35 games in college and they're coming in and playing 82. So where does that fit in?
No, you absolutely do. But to Eternal's point earlier, with the younger player, they're going to bounce back quicker than the older veteran player from soft tissue injuries specifically. So barring something catastrophic. Now, to play devil's advocate for my own premise, Jaime Jaquez Jr. is a good example of a soft tissue injury that lingered pretty much the majority of the season and derailed a lot of his development. So that you do bring up a valid point, but because they're younger, they typically bounce back a lot faster. And it also depends on how you're building the structure of your team. So for example, like the Miami Heat right now, you have Bam Adebayo, Tyler Hero, Kel'el Ware as your young core. You have Apella Larson, a second-round pick, Kashad Johnson off the bench. You have all these young players. I'm not sacrificing that young talent if you're only getting Kevin Durant. And I'll put it to you in this way. Because if you have Tyler, Bam, and KD, you still have no point of attack defense. You have nobody to distribute the ball, and you have no backup big off the bench. And if what Ishbia is doing is asking for a haul for Kevin Durant, and you're giving up draft picks, you have no way to supplement your roster this season or next season because you're giving up draft capital. So it all depends on what you're giving up, in my opinion, in order to make this work.
But Adel, to that point, what they've been good at, okay, more than anything else, we've talked about the draft. What they've been good at is kind of finding rotation players, like undrafteds, that kind of thing. Like that is a way that we talk about Moneyball, right? Like that is a way that they've kind of exploited, and I mean this in the best possible way. Like they've inefficiency, right? Like instead of using draft capital on rotation players, in addition to draft capital, they've been able to use undrafteds and find guys in the past, whether it was Gabe Vincent, a Caleb Martin, a Max Strus, Duncan Robinson, whatever, okay, and then advancing on to Haywood Highsmith, etc. That's one of the reasons why I've always felt that the strategy of building the top-heavy roster, now this was prior to the CBA making it more complicated, but building the top-heavy roster made the most sense for them because they can find rotation players. They'll find the next high. So am I wrong about that? Because it seems to be like if you have a pipeline, but then we've talked about how they don't maybe have the same pipeline they've had before.
You're not wrong in the sense of if you had the other supplementary pieces and you only need one or two of those guys.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this question. If they do get Kevin Durant, they got to probably give up Wiggins and some other pieces and some draft picks, right?
Probably Duncan, right? Yeah.
Are you able to re-sign D Mitch if you're going to extend Durant?
Well, that's an issue. We've talked about that. Matt's come on and talked about that. That makes it. I think you can, but it depends what the market's out there for him and what he gets.
But here's my point. Say you can't.
Mm-hmm.
You now have Drew Smith as your one guard on the roster that can handle the ball and somewhat facilitate and somewhat give you point of attack defense. Like that's it.
You have a $24 million point guard in last year's contract.
Also,
we are not. We are not. No, we are not.
On the Drew Smith point, and then I get a ball back to Adel, who's also coming back from a soft tissue injury,
Achilles,
significant, no question. No, and I'll give it back to you now because I know this is one of your points, and this is why we want to have these Devil's Advocate podcasts because those of us at Five on the Floor have to do this every day. We're looking for the shiny new toy, even if the toy is almost 37 years old, because I'm like, okay, this will make things more interesting. But I understand when we start talking about the type of player you're building around and then also the lack of availability for that possible player. Let me ask you this, Eternal. Do you think you look at the teams that are out there right now that may be interested in him? And these teams go back and forth. But San Antonio, Houston, Minnesota, Toronto has been mentioned as a dark horse. I think Orlando's out of the picture now, obviously, with the move that they made for Bane. Which team does he make the most sense on? If you were him and you were saying, I just want a ball, that's it. I don't want to deal with the leadership stuff. I just want to go and I want to get my 25 and hopefully that contributes to winning. Okay. which team would you go to? San Antonio, or want to go to? Because he doesn't choose; he's not a free agent. But which team would you, kind of push to get to?
I would say San Antonio. I think San Antonio has the exact structure that he would want, as far as like not having to be the rah-rah leader or show them the way and everything like that. They have not only guys in the front office to do that, they have guys around their team, kind of similar to the Miami Heat, right? Like they have Tim Duncan still around the team. They have David Robertson still around. They have all of those championship players still there around the team, coaching the guys up, mentoring and everything like that. KD just comes in. He just comes in to be a great player with not a lot of responsibility on his shoulders, because that team is good enough, and they're going to be good enough, especially with De'Aaron Fox in his second full season with them. Wemby, when he comes back, Sohan, Stephon Castle, whatever the hell they do with the 2nd and 14th pick, like they still have other avenues to improve the team even after they get Durant, right? Which is why it makes more sense for the teams like San Antonio, Houston, all these other places that have these treasure chest of, we can make a move for you, know that you have availability concerns, know that you're not 34, 33, 32-year-old Kevin Durant, and our team be fine. We just need you to get us across the finish line. Kevin Durant at this age is a finish line player. Miami is not even in that conversation. Not in the conversation of get us to the finish line, not even in the conversation of we could sacrifice a couple of draft picks, a couple of young players to make this move and still be fine. To your point before I pass the ball back, Ethan, and to kind of tie along with what Adel was saying, when you make a move for this type of player, right, and you look at the big three and all of that, right, you're talking about a different stage of existence for the Heat, because you had a young LeBron, young Wade, young Bosh. Guys were signing up because if one of them misses time, like you still have such a good enough amount of talent to where they're solving issues on both ends of the floor, right? You have questions about Tyler showing up in the playoffs still. You have questions about this, about that, right? And now you need, and especially when you're sacrificing young players who you're just trying to get the best out of them for production value, like contract production, now you're having to go out, even if some guys want to come and play for you on the minimum contracts, it's only so much you can do cap-wise, and that it just becomes way convoluted to try to put a balanced team together when you're looking at Orlando, when you're looking at Indiana. All these other teams are going to make, trades to get better, as we just saw.
Well, I think the point is on that, you could put a roster together, but it's probably going to take a second season to do it, like it did with Shaq. But the difference was you had Shaq and you had Wade to build with. And so you could patch with a Damon Jones, and you still had Eddie Jones on the roster, and you elevated UD to the starting lineup. And so there was a way to kind of figure it out. I think that the problem with this being a 2-year process is that, again, KD will be 1 year older. And so that's what you have to kind of decide here. And again, this is why I'm torn, and why to me it's like you get him if he's at your price. And I know Heat fans hate me saying that, but I think you get him if he's at your price. Of course, the price you're paying him is pretty damn large over those next 2 seasons. And the idea of, well, he'll be an expiring 2 seasons after that, and then you can move him at $60 million. I mean, I don't know what you're going to be able to move at $60 million, but that all plays into this. I guess, again, as we close here, it's definitely a reasonable point. You're talking about availability, and that is core to them. And I had heard they did not want to manage an aging star again. I'd heard that consistently. And that's why I asked Riley the question at the press conference. And he basically indicated, it's kind of like, I don't want to get married again, but if Sofia Vergara walks by me and all of a sudden falls in love with me, then yes, I might. Okay. And that's kind of what Riley's answer felt like at his press conference. So I'll let Adel close. Do you think ultimately their instinct is such because they've had this 10-year, infatuation with this particular player, and this is the way they've built best typically in the past, that if push comes to shove, they will say, okay, let's do it?
The only way I see this working out is if it, like you said, it's at their price, and there's going to have to be another shoe to drop. It can't be just KD. Like, there will have to be a subsequent move to shore up the roster, in my opinion, because you still need to get that guard. So like you said, Terry's contract may be tradable. You're also going to need a backup big. And so even if you get one or two of your undrafted or Sioux Falls guys to pop as rotation players, that's a big if. So I think there's going to have to be a subsequent move prior to this all shaken out. So if they get Durant, then boom, another move has to be followed up right after it.
I'll say this: if there's a subsequent move, I'd rather it be Drew Holiday than DeMar DeRozan. But that's another conversation, and a name that I could see them exploring again. Although rim pressure with Drew at this stage is not really there either. But it is what it is. All right, we got to go. I'm on battery saver right now because I didn't plug in my computer, so we'd be on a clock. Eternal, appreciate it. Adele, appreciate it too. Check out Off the Floor, as we always mention, playback.tv/5RSN. We'll continue to follow this. Of course, the draft next Wednesday. I keep saying Thursday, but they split this silly thing over 2 days. Adele, just for people, sickos like you. Next Wednesday, the 25th, I'll be with Alex and Greg. I know, not Greg. He's not coming down from South Carolina.
Jesus
Alex
Christ.
and Brady at the arena. Okay, I'm at 2%.
Straight up.
Everybody. Bye.
Straight up.
Later.